When categorizing the passing charts of Caleb Williams, Michael Penix Jr., Jake Browning, and Aaron Rodgers against the Vikings defense into field zones, a clear pattern emerges showing how the Vikings' coverage structure dictates outcomes. Caleb Williams' chart shows heavy reliance on short flats and swing routes to the left, often within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. These completions were mostly checkdowns with limited yards after catch, as the Vikings linebackers closed quickly. Williams struggled in the curl and hook areas over the middle, producing several incompletions and a negative 13.2% completion percentage over expected CPOE. His only touchdown came on a seam throw just above linebacker depth, but all deep attempts were contained by disciplined safeties. Michael Penix Jr. displayed a similar trend, completing most passes in short and middle hook zones with modest accuracy but little explosiveness. His attack was conservative, avoiding vertical challenges and reflecting the Vikings' ability to compress zone spacing. Jake Browning found rhythm in underneath concepts, particularly in flats and short curls, posting a positive plus 1.2% CPOE. However, his 2 interceptions both came when forcing passes into the mid-left seam, an area where the Vikings disguised their coverage rotations effectively. In contrast, Aaron Rodgers operated with veteran precision, dominating short to intermediate curls and right flat throws. His lone touchdown came off a seam route where he manipulated the safety with his eyes, and his plus 6.1% CPOE underscored command of timing windows and defensive spacing. From a defensive perspective, Minnesota's strengths lie in its deep 1/3 and 1/2 zones, where safety leverage consistently eliminated vertical threats. Their curl and hook zones also performed well, with linebackers dropping effectively to disrupt rhythm throws from younger quarterbacks. However, the defense showed vulnerability in horizontal spacing, especially in short right flats and intermediate hook seam areas between the hash marks. Rodgers and Browning exploited these weaknesses, while Williams and Penix struggled to adapt. The Vikings were particularly exposed when linebackers like Ivan Pace Jr. or Josh Metellus blitzed, leaving checkdown lanes open for running backs or tight ends. Overall, the Vikings' coverage system excels vertically and in compressed space, but bends horizontally against quarterbacks who can anticipate curl-flat exchanges or manipulate coverage seams. Rodgers and Browning demonstrated this understanding, while the rookies Williams and Penix hesitated in their reads and avoided the intermediate layers. In essence, the Vikings' defense thrives on depth integrity and post-snap disguise, but remains vulnerable to rhythm-based, horizontally balanced passing structures that exploit the flats and hook seams. From weeks 1 to 5 and 7, the Vikings' defense showed a distinct directional pattern against the run. Opponents achieved their most consistent rushing efficiency through the interior left lanes, left guard to mid-left, and their most explosive plays off the left tackle, provided the edge was sealed. Runs toward the right side were much less productive, averaging only 3.5 yards per attempt. Specifically, left tackle runs were extremely volatile, ranging from 2.5 to 11.0 yards per carry, but generated huge gains when runners like Bijan Robinson or Kenneth Gainwell could cut outside defenders number 15 Turner and number 44 Metellus. The left interior gap between number 61 Redmond and number 97 Hargrave consistently yielded 6 to 9 yards per carry with strong yards before contact, while the right side gaps, right guard through right end, offered much lower returns unless paired with jet motion or guard pulls. Personnel analysis highlights how these patterns arise. On the defensive line, Redmond number 61 provides stability on the left edge, but nose tackle Hargrave number 97 grades poorly, 50.2, and struggles to hold against double teams, while right end Allen number 93 loses leverage on traps and pulls. Among linebackers, Turner number 15 frequently over-pursues from the strong side edge, creating cutback lanes, and Cashman number 51 is the weakest second-level defender with poor gap discipline. Wilson number 55 offers average support, but reacts slowly to blocking shifts. In the secondary, Metellus number 44 attacks downhill, but can be influenced by motion, whereas Jackson number 26 provides steadier deep field support. Collectively, these weaknesses leave the A and B gaps, LG-C-RG, and the left edge most vulnerable, while the right edge, anchored by Greenard number 58, remains largely sound. When correlating direction to personnel, inside left runs expose Hargrave's and Cashman's deficiencies. Teams such as Atlanta and Cleveland gained more than 7 yards per carry through these lanes. Stretch or counter plays off the left tackle punished Turner's over pursuit and Metellus's tendency to bite on motion, producing similar efficiency. The mid-right zone, defended by Allen and Wilson, allows occasional moderate gains when offenses use pulling guards, but the right end, where Greenard and corner Murphy Jr. maintain outside contain, has yielded very few explosive plays. Strategically, offenses should blend zone and gap schemes through the left interior lanes, LG to ML, using inside zone, duo, or trap concepts to exploit weak interior fits between Hargrave and Cashman. Edge complements off the left tackle. Stretch, counter, or toss-crack runs can capitalize on Turner's aggressiveness, especially if Metellus is blocked via motion or tight end crackback. Play-action boots, faking inside left runs, can then isolate linebackers and open drag or flat routes to the right. As a constraint, counter tray designs pulling the left guard can attack Allen's slower reaction on the mid-right side. Overall, Minnesota's primary structural weakness lies in interior gap integrity, followed by left edge discipline. Most explosive runs of 5+ yards originate through the EAB gaps or just outside the left tackle. The right side remains relatively stable, anchored by Greenard's containment. Opponents like Atlanta, Philadelphia, and Cleveland have consistently produced 6 to 9 yards per attempt on these left side lanes, often generating 3.5 to 5.0 yards after contact. In short, the optimal attack sequence against Minnesota runs from the left guard through mid-left, with complementary off-tackle counters and occasional right side misdirection. Right edge dives should be avoided, as Greenard's discipline limits gains to 2 to 3 yards per attempt. The Vikings blitz profile reflects a defense built on aggressive pressure mechanics but undermined by inconsistent back-end coverage. When blitzing, Minnesota generates high disruption rates through linebacker and safety pressure, yet the trade-off is visible in coverage volatility, especially on the right boundary. The data highlights Evan Pace Jr. and Harrison Smith as the most efficient blitzers, producing quarterback pressures on 43.8% and 40% of their rushes, respectively. Their Timing, acceleration, and disguise form the core of the team's blitz identity. However, while the front seven excels in creating immediate disruption, coverage behind the blitz remains unstable. Isaiah Rodgers allows a 70.6% catch rate and plus 6.5% completion percentage over expected CPOE, becoming the primary exposure point in single coverage. Josh Metellus, though physical, has allowed negative 14.1 expected points, added EPA on a 53.3% catch rate, showing inconsistency under man pressure concepts. Smith remains the schematic keystone. His ability to alternate between blitz disguise and back-end coverage preserves structural balance, forcing quarterbacks into hurried decisions without leaving deep zones unprotected. In contrast, Eric Wilson epitomizes Minnesota's high-risk, high-reward approach. He is the most productive blitzer in sack output, but often sacrifices coverage integrity to do so. Jonathan Greenard serves as the volume rusher, who absorbs double teams and opens lanes for teammates, while Dallas Turner provides elite edge acceleration, yet functions primarily as a contain and cleanup rusher rather than a primary initiator. Andrew Van Ginkel offers situational quickness in rotational bursts, but lacks sustained blitz utility. Across the defensive line, Allen, Hargrave, and Greenard anchor the pressure spine by occupying blockers and freeing linebackers like Pace and Wilson to exploit interior gaps. In coverage, the front seven aggression exposes the secondary's fragility. Rodgers has been heavily targeted 17 times, 12 completions, 220 yards, plus 6.5 EPA, indicating opponents' preference for isolating him when blitz pressure leaves corners on islands. Metellus remains inconsistent yet more disruptive than Rodgers, while Byron Murphy Jr. has been the most reliable defender under pressure situations, holding opponents to a 33.3% catch rate and negative 1.9 EPA. This establishes a clear coverage hierarchy. Murphy offers dependable containment, Metellus provides physical resilience, and Rodgers represents the structural liability. Overall, the Vikings' blitz defense is most effective when Pace Jr. and Smith act as the central triggers, combining inside acceleration and disguised rotation to create immediate quarterback discomfort while preserving coverage balance. When the defense shifts toward heavier line-based pressure packages featuring Greenard, Turner, or Allen, the pressure remains potent, but the secondary becomes more vulnerable, particularly through Rodgers' side. The optimal formula for Minnesota's blitz efficiency blends Pace's delayed A-gap pressure, Turner's edge compression, and Smith's rotational disguise, producing a synchronized rush that maximizes disruption while minimizing coverage exposure. This controlled chaos model defines the Vikings' defensive identity, explosive and high-ceiling when executed in rhythm, but volatile when protection schemes neutralize the first wave of pressure. The 2025 Minnesota Vikings defensive structure reveals a sharp contrast between their blitz geometry, which is well-engineered and disruptive, and their no-pressure coverage, which is stable but overly dependent on timing and rush synergy. When the Vikings blitz, the defense is built around a diagonal crash concept that tilts pressure heavily toward the left edge. Jonathan Greenard and T.J. Turner form the outside crash duo, while Ivan Pace Jr. and Harrison Smith collapse the interior through the A-gap and nickel lane. This creates a diagonal compression path from the left edge to the right A-gap, which serves as the structural spine of Brian Flores' blitz design. The most effective pressure originates inside, particularly through the A-gap and nickel channels, where both Pace and Smith consistently win within 3 seconds of the snap. The left edge produces pressure through sustained containment rather than burst speed, while the sack and disruption production typically funnels inward. Edge rushers push quarterbacks toward the collapsing pocket, where Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave often clean up plays. When Turner's wide crash is paired with Pace's inside attack, the Vikings achieve their highest disruption rate. Roughly 45% of dropbacks result in some form of quarterback disturbance. However, this aggressive design comes with coverage trade-offs. When blitzes are triggered, the right boundary, Isaiah Rodgers' side, remains the clear vulnerability, consistently yielding positive opponent EPA plus 6.5. Conversely, Byron Murphy Jr. locks down his side of the field, allowing negative EPA, negative 1.9, and providing the stability that lets Flores overload the opposite direction. The defensive heat map confirms this imbalance. Most pressure originates from the A-gap and nickel right, 40 to 44% pressure rate, with moderate containment from the left edge and heightened coverage risk along the right boundary. Statistically, the Vikings' most efficient directional path is the left edge plus interior overload, blending Turner's edge width, Pace's acceleration, and Allen's power. Pace Jr. stands out as the team's most efficient blitzer with a 43.8% pressure rate, while Harrison Smith complements him with 40% pressure efficiency and minimal EPA loss. The main systemic weakness is the right side exposure in heavy blitz looks, where corners are often left isolated without deep safety leverage. In essence, the Vikings' blitz identity is that of compression through controlled chaos, forcing quarterbacks into collapsing pockets rather than pursuing raw sack totals. When the Vikings fail to generate pressure, however, the defense loses its edge. In no-pressure situations, coverage performance declines sharply, exposing the unit's dependency on front disruption. In these clean pocket settings, Josh Metellus and Isaiah Rodgers remain the most reliable coverage anchors, each generating negative opponent EPA through tight separation and disciplined positioning. Yet Byron Murphy Jr. becomes the most targetable player, plus 6.0 EPA allowed, often giving up easy completions on boundary routes. The linebackers, particularly Jordan Hicks and Pace Jr., hold their zones competently but struggle to limit yards after the catch, producing YASC ranges of 4 to 11 yards per reception, evidence of spacing looseness in underneath zones. Minnesota's pass rush without blitzing lacks a consistent one-on-one winner. Greenard and Hargrave occasionally create near wins, but Allen's interior push is slow, and Turner's edge speed only marginally disrupts timing. As a result, opposing quarterbacks enjoy clean pockets and favorable throwing windows, averaging 3.5 yards of separation per target and over 60% completion rates. Turnover creation nearly vanishes in these moments, as the team's hawk rate, pass breakups, or interceptions per target hovers around 8 to 10%, one of the lowest situational figures among pressure-based defenses. Structurally, the Vikings' coverage in no-pressure scenarios is serviceable but volatile. The defense functions best when the front forces timing distortion. Without it, Minnesota becomes reactive and overly zone-dependent. Their short and intermediate coverage remains sound through Metellus and Rodgers, but Murphy's boundary cushion and Wilson's soft hook zones invite high-percentage throws. Ultimately, the Vikings' defense thrives only when front seven pressure synchronizes with coverage discipline. When blitzes are active, the scheme compresses the field and amplifies disruption. When the rush stalls, opponents easily dissect the zones. The result is a unit that depends entirely on engineered pressure geometry for success, one capable of chaos when coordinated, but susceptible to slow death when neutralized. The Vikings' deep pass defense shows a clear and consistent weakness across both long and mid-yardage situations, revealing systemic breakdowns rather than isolated player errors. The data filtered for deep targets, 20-plus air yards under the nearest defender splits, demonstrates that the Vikings' coverage structure struggles most when opponents attack vertically on both second and third downs. In long yardage scenarios, 7-plus yards to go, Byron Murphy Jr. has been the most frequently targeted corner and the most vulnerable. He has allowed every deep target to be completed for 48 yards and a touchdown, producing a perfect passer rating of 158.3. Isaiah Rodgers performed slightly better with a 95.8 rating, but still gave up a 45-yard completion, while Theo Jackson surrendered 31 yards on his lone target. The only standout in a positive way is Andrew Van Ginkel, who successfully prevented a completion despite being the nearest defender on a 39-yard target. Overall, in these long situations, opponents completed 5 of 6 deep passes, an 83% rate, for 163 total yards and 1 touchdown, averaging 27.2 yards per attempt. This reflects a major vertical vulnerability, especially on second and long and third and long downs when corners are exposed in single coverage or late rotating zone schemes. The Vikings' mid-yardage deep defense, 3 to 6 yards to go, has been even more problematic. Josh Metellus and Isaiah Rodgers each allowed a touchdown on their only respective deep targets, combining for 116 total yards and 2 scores on just 2 attempts. Both completions generated perfect passer ratings of 158.3, with Rodgers' 79-yard allowance likely resulting from coverage bust in a quarters or match zone look, while Metellus' 37-yard touchdown signals a safety depth or rotation error. These plays underscore how Minnesota's compressed coverage in shorter yardage situations creates severe, over-the-top exposure. When the deep pass data is broken down by down and distance, the pattern becomes even clearer. On second and long, Murphy again allowed a 22-yard completion, while Van Ginkel maintained tight coverage with an incompletion, an indication of stronger discipline before late downs. On third and long, however, the defense regressed. Rodgers and Jeff Okudah each allowed deep completions of 45 and 28 yards, respectively, totaling 73 yards at an average of 24.3 yards per attempt. These third down breakdowns have enabled opponents to convert drive-saving chunk plays, a recurring issue throughout the season. Across all situations, the Vikings' deep defense has allowed 7 completions on 8 total targets for 279 yards and 3 touchdowns, yielding an average passer rating of roughly 138 and a massive 35 yards per attempt. In combined mid and long yardage scenarios, second and third down plays, the defense surrendered 211 total deep yards on 5 completions out of 7 attempts, for an average yards per attempt near 30 and 0 interceptions. The lack of takeaways and breakups emphasizes that this is not merely a matter of missed individual assignments, but rather a product of structural vulnerability. The issues stem from poor safety leverage, inconsistent coverage communication, and timing mismatches between the pass rush and secondary rotations. In summary, Minnesota's deep coverage performance reveals three major flaws. First, their down and distance sensitivity is evident. On second down, they maintain moderate control, but by third down, the corners lose vertical leverage, allowing high-value conversions. Second, their explosive play exposure is severe. Every mid-yardage deep attempt is turned into a touchdown, indicating misalignment in the back end. Third, personnel consistency is an issue. Murphy and Rodgers have been repeatedly targeted, giving up multiple deep completions and touchdowns, while Metellus and Okuda have each contributed to major breakdowns. Van Ginkel remains the lone exception, showing disciplined coverage. Overall, with a completion rate over 70%, an average of 30 yards per attempt, and a touchdown on nearly 30% of deep targets, the Vikings' deep defense fails to finish possessions, particularly on critical downs. The problem lies not just in execution, but in the structure of Brian Flores' coverage schemes. Too shallow at safety depth, too reactive in rotation, and too lenient in vertical containment. The Chargers' wide receivers currently outperform their tight ends as run blockers, which is an inversion of traditional expectations and significantly shapes the structure of their rushing design. Outside zone and jet motion runs benefit more from wide receiver involvement, especially when Keandre Lambert-Smith or Omarion Hampton are responsible for sealing edges. In contrast, tight end anchored runs such as inside zone, duo, or counter show reduced efficiency when Oronde Gadsden 2 or Tyler Conklin serve as the primary point blockers. The optimal structural approach is to align Will Dissly as the inline tight end on motion or double team calls, while using wide receivers in crack replace or arc seal roles. Gadsden should have limited inline snaps, used primarily in run-pass option RPO alignments. In short, the wide receivers deliver more consistent and leveraged run support, while the tight ends offer positional stability but uneven power. The Chargers' run game optimization against the Vikings defense further highlights this contrast. The wide receiver unit provides unexpectedly strong run game leverage and perimeter sealing. Lambert-Smith, in particular, excels in outside zone motion and crackback responsibilities. Analytically, this results in higher expected yards before contact, YBCO/ATT, when wide receivers act as perimeter sealers. Conversely, the team's expected points added, EPA, declines when Gadsden 2 or Tucker Fisk are used as inline blocking points due to weaker sustain mechanics. The data shows that the Chargers' most efficient rushing structure is not a heavy formation. It's a spread zone approach with motion, typically executed in 11 personnel or light 12 personnel groupings. Strategically, several key recommendations emerge. First, wide receivers certainly should continue to function as lead seal motion blockers. Lambert-Smith and Hampton are ideal for this role, while Keene and Allen can serve as a secondary positional blocker, using leverage angles rather than power. This approach maximizes perimeter efficiency and produces the strongest positive EPA against light or neutral defensive boxes. Second, Gadsden's inline role should be minimized Instead, he should be deployed as a detached slot or flex Y receiver to stretch coverage without engaging in direct blocking. Third, the Chargers should center their interior runs around Disley's leverage. Formations should use him as the motion seal tight end or attached Y and duo and power concepts, with Conklin moving across the formation to offset defensive flow through split zone or sift action. Finally, integrating jet play concepts is crucial. Pairing Darius Davis's pre-snap motion with inside zone or counter runs can distort Minnesota's aggressive linebacker fits, while outside zone plays using Hampton or Lambert Smith as sealers have produced the highest rushing yards over expected RYOE trends. When mapping these ideas to the Chargers' EPA formation matrix, the pattern becomes clear. The 11 personnel grouping, 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 running back, delivers the most value, generating approximately plus 0.12 EPA per play on outside zone and jet sweep runs, where wide receivers handle primary blocking leverage. The 12 personnel set, 2 tight ends, 1 running back, remains moderately efficient, plus 0.05 EPA per play when Disley and Conklin execute dual edge seals. The 21 personnel formation, fullback and tight end, also performs solidly plus 0.06 EPA per play, particularly in duo or ISO runs led by Matlock and Disley. However, the 13 personnel grouping, 3 tight ends, shows a sharp decline, negative 0.10 EPA per play, effective only in short yardage situations and generally detrimental to efficiency. Ultimately, the Chargers' run game should lean decisively into wide receiver-driven blocking concepts rather than tight end heavy sets. Their true EPA ceiling is achieved through 11 personnel outside zone runs with motion seals, not compressed 13 personnel power formations. Disley should anchor edge blocks supported by Lambert Smith's motion leverage, while minimizing the inline usage of Gadsden and Fisk to avoid negative EPA plays. If executed consistently, this structure can elevate Los Angeles from a middling rushing unit, approximately negative 0.05 EPA per play baseline, into a top 10 directional EPA offense against a light or neutral boxes, particularly effective against Minnesota's blitz-heavy, edge-soft defensive framework. Run-first packages, sustain plus, tilt the box. 1. 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, Disley, 1 running back, Vidal, wide receiver seal outside run menu. Alignments. Tight bunched WR stacks to the run strength. Disley true Y to the weak or strong edge. Lambert Smith Hampton as motion sealer. Allen as crack/arc helper. McConkey reduced as split too nasty for leverage. Core concepts: outside zone, toss crack, pin pull, split zone bluff, jet orbit constraint with Darius Davis. Why it works versus min light boxes plus perimeter softness. Minnesota gives up positive efficiency outside the tackles and light fronts and allows too much yards after contact once the edge is lost. Your WRS are better edge workers than your TES, using them as crack/arc sealers, raises yards before contact and punishes late safety rotation. Player notes: keep Disley on the point. Lambert Smith/Hampton do the seal. Allen wins leverage angles. Don't ask him to sustain long. Vidal presses outside hip, then bang/cut per flow. 2. 12 personnel, Disley plus Conklin. Inside control plus horizontal threats. Alignments: Disley attached. Conklin as sift/slice, H. WRS Allen plus McConkey reduced splits. Core concepts, duo insert with sift, mid-zone, GH counter, Conklin leads across, a jet ghost motion. Why it works. Urza min. Stacked duct under center looks are better versus inside runs, but you still want some interior diet to keep the nickel honest. The value here is run to pass constraint. After a couple of insert duo hits, the same pictures become deadly play action. Next section. 3. 11 fast, pistol / shotgun misdirection. Alignments, pistol or split back looks. WR stack into the boundary. Core concepts, counter off. Split flow zone. Bash GT back opposite QB. Keep look. RPO slant bubble. Why it works versus min. From shotgun, Minnesota is elite versus pass, but gives you run efficiency because LBs blend with coverage rules. Use misdirection to steal 4 to 6 yards and keep them in nickel. What to avoid? Heavy 13 personnel, 3 TEs. It compresses the picture for Flores and you lose your WR seal edge advantage. Efficiency dips. Pass first packages, move chains plus hunt matchups. 4. 12 personnel, under center max protect. Play action, explosive engine. Alignments, Disley inline, Gadsden 2 flexed / wing, WRS Allen Z condensed, McConkey slot / YOYO motion, mixed tight bunch and compressions. Core concepts, deep over / cross, dagger post cross, Yankee, flood return, boots and keepers. Why it works. Versus min, under center, their pass EPA flips positive. LBs and safeties over trigger to run keys, opening 12 to 22 yard windows behind them. Max protect lets Herbert hit layered routes, while Flores loses disguise depth. Player notes. Allen as the intermediate metronome, Diggs returns. McConkey on the over with motion to manufacture leverage. Gadsden 2 as the crosser or seam bender, keep him out of true point of attack blocking. Johnston rotates in for post shots from condensed splits. 5. 11 personnel. Shotgun, motion heavy, quick game, rhythm and anti-pressure. Alignments, 3x1 and 2x2 with stacks. Frequent fast / return motion. Core concepts, spacing, stick nod, slant flat, choice, their option, mirrored hitches, quick outs, RPO glance attached to split zone. Why it works versus min. Their nickel thrives on timing compression and simulated pressure. Motion / stacks give free access releases, speed up Herbert's answers, and keep you ahead of the chains while you sprinkle in run tags that exploit their shotgun run softness. 6. 10 personnel for WRP, force dime, then punish. Alignments, Allen / McConkey / Trey Harris / Johnston, tight bunch into empty shifts. Core concepts, RB draw from empty with Vidal motioning late. Stick draw, slots, seam, switch verticals, quick. T. Eelis RPOS. Why it works, versus Emien. Their dime is the weakest package, positive EPA allowed, run defense collapses. If they answer your 10 with dime, you run them. If they stubbornly play nickel, you got 4 wide leverage to flood underneath and hit seams. Explosive shot menu. Call-ups for plus EPA spikes. Under center 12. Post wheel / Yankee. Johnston on the post, Vidal wheel from the backfield, Allen on the dig, exploits late too high rotation, 12 compressions, dagger out of max pro, Gadsden 2 vertical clear seam bend, Allen dagger dig at 18, McConkey cross. The LB level is vacated by PA. 11 stack, double move versus cloud. Pump the hitch / now, attack the outside third. Works when Flores spins to 3 cloud and corners sit. Player-specific usage notes. Will Disley, T.E. Anchor your run edges and be the 6th OL in 11/12. Critical to PA protection integrity. Tyler Conklin, T.E. Use as H-back mover, sift arc, GH counter lead. Avoid making him primary edge versus true D, ES on static runs. Oronde Gadsden 2, big slot / flex Y. Minimize inline blocking. Maximize as PA crosser / seam and as a formation stressor in compressions. Keenan Allen, coverage manipulator, choice / return on early downs, dagger / dig in PA, occasional crack replace, angle, not power. Lad McConkey, motion to stack, speed release, primary on overs and crossers, jet ghost to distort LB keys, Keandre Lambert-Smith / Omarion Hampton, WRS for perimeter work, your best arc / crack sealers on outside zone / toss. They're the difference in YBC on perimeter runs. Quentin Johnston, low volume, high impact. Posts, glance off, PA, backside go from condensed. Darius Davis, jet / orbit and screen constraints to punish late safety fill. Kimani Vidal, RB, outside zone vision plus counter footwork, pair with pistol / bash and wheel in PA. Situational script, quick call sheet. 1st and 10 midfield, 11 WR seal OZs / toss, same look P, a flood return, RPO glance if nickel mug. 2nd and 4 to 6, 12 under center PA, deep over dagger. Check to duo if they lighten. 3rd and 2 to 3, 12 sift insert or 11 bash GT. QB keep look as constraint. If dime appears, audible to draw, stick. Red zone, high. 12 bunch PA leak, Conklin / switch fade to Johnston from compressions. 2-minute 11 motion, quick game with occasional slot seam, McConkey, and RB angle versus LB. Now, what not to major in. Static shotgun without motion. Plays into their nickel disguise, triple T compression. TE heavy 13 on early downs. You lose your comparative advantage. WR edge leverage. Long developing deep shots from shotgun. Their nickel pressure rate is too efficient unless shielded by PA or Max Pro. TL / DR personnel answers. Best all-around grouping. 11 personnel with Disley inline and WRS as sealers. Allen plus McConkey plus Lambert-Smith / Hampton. It maximizes rushing efficiency on the perimeter and keeps your pass menu wide. Explosive pass grouping. 12 personnel under center. Disley inline, Gadsden 2 flex for max protect play action. Deep overs, posts, dagger, dime punish grouping. 10 personnel to force Minnesota into their weakest package. Run draws, screens, and hit seams if they sit light.